Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Border Book Bash, the 7th annual Border Book Bash, celebrating teens and tweens of the Rio Grande Valley. This is our Girl Power panel. I'm very excited about this panel, and so I have some of my favorite female writers all right here on our little, what is this? Like our little, it's not a Zoom, but our little virtual,
it's a virtual experience.
So I'm going to start real quickly because I have a lot of things that I want to discuss, and I want you guys to hear them, everything they have to say. This is an amazing group. So I want you to introduce yourselves and tell us where you're tuning in from and a little bit about the books you write.
Go.
We'll start
with Marcia. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm Marcia Mikelson. I live in San Antonio, but right now I'm in New Mexico. We're doing a quick impromptu trip. Our college football team made it to a bowl game. So that's why I'm in the car. It's just last minute planned trip, but we're excited to hopefully our Cougars win today. I write young adult fiction, contemporary. And my subject matter, my latest book, Where I Belong, is about a young girl who's an immigrant from Guatemala and kind of navigating that, that she lives here, but she was born there and all of the dynamics that come with that.
Okay.
Hi, I'm assuming I'm next. I'm Anna Meriano. I'm author of middle grade books like the Love, Sugar, Magic series, some magical baking middle grade, and also young adult books. So I've got, my newest one is It Sounds Like This, which is a marching band, very loose Snow White retelling. And then my other one is This Is How We Fly, a companion novel to that one that's a loose Cinderella retelling about kids who play quad ball, which is a very unusual sport that recently got a name change that involves brooms and like 3 little hoops and is no longer associated with turfy authors. So yeah, I write both realistic and fantasy stories all set in Texas. I'm calling in from Houston.
Kaela?
Hey everybody, I'm Kaela Rivera. I'm the author of the Cicerrillos series. The first one is about a 12-year-old girl who has to become a bruja in order to rescue her older sister who was kidnapped by El Sombreron. So lots of Mexican folklore, Mesoamerican folklore, ancient folklore. I love my myths, And there's going to be 3 books in the series, and the last one comes out next year, as long as everything shakes out. Oh, and I'm calling in from Utah. That's why I want to thick sweater.
Lupita?
Hi, my name is Guadalupe Garcia McCall, and I am in Helotes, Texas, which is really a part of the greater San Antonio area. And so I am right there with Marcia. We've actually become close friends. I write middle grade and YA. My middle grade is fantastical. It has a lot of myths from our folklore, like La Llorona and things like that. My latest book for middle grade is called The Keeper. I did not have a copy of it. I'm so sorry, but it is based on these 2 brother and sister who have to move to Oregon and find themselves in a bit of a jam because there are some interesting people who want to get to them, and one of the leaders called the Keeper, and so it's very scary when he starts receiving letters. My YA is for older kids, and this is my latest one, Echoes of Grace. It is a gothic Borderlands novel about 2 sisters who are trying to, very difficult times, come back together to sisterhood and to love. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm author Charlton-Trujillo. I am with you today from the greater San Antonio area, but it's not Helotes. So there you go. I'm on the complete other side. So I started in middle grade. So I write middle grade, young adult. And this year I got to go into picture book, which was so fantastic. I was so excited. The book that's behind me, is it behind me? Yeah. Is Lupe Lopez, Rockstar Rules. and I'm so stoked. I just got this in. It's a pre-arc of the second book. I'm so excited for this. And it's been such an interesting transition to go from writing young adult and middle grade into picture book. It's so exciting because you get to meet all these young little, readers when they're just so pure and they're so ready and they're so excited. And it's been really a beautiful time to transition and to have conversations with young people. So I'm just really glad to be here amongst these incredible people. And I'm supposed to pitch every single book, but I'm not very good at that. So I guess it'll come out as we're talking. So, but thanks for being here.
Wow, I am absolutely honored to be amongst all of you. Margie, thank you so much for the invitation. There are so many of my YA literary heroes here right now. I'm also before I introduce myself, I'd like to say I'm the mother of a teen that kind of drags their feet on reading. And so I constantly have to introduce books and kind of, so I'm very aware of just what's out there in YA. Hi, my name is Gris Munoz. I'm an author. I'm a poet. I write essays. I'm currently writing a biography. And as I'm sitting here and I'm listening to all of you introduce your fantastic works, I'm realizing, and I had a little moment, I'm realizing that I also feel like I'm on this panel. Maybe it's a sign that maybe I should consider writing a YA. Like, these are my people. I don't know. I'm going, whoa. But I'm a poet and I'm a writer. I'm the author of the collection Guadalupe Girl, born and raised in El Paso. And Guadalupe Girl is a collection of short stories and poems, bilingual short stories and poems written, from the border and depicting my experience as a queer young woman. And so in my writing, I don't exactly have it's not exactly classified YA because Guadalupe Girl in my book grows up into, but there are many parts of my book where I very much channel the little girl that I was. And so I like to think that I keep all of my ages with me. There's an indigenous song that says, Tengo todas las edades, mis abuelas viven en mí. And so it's like it also talks about being like a little girl, a young woman. So I'm getting emotional. It's just really beautiful to be here today. I was actually not expecting to be so emotional about sitting with all of you and listening to you just briefly talk about your works. So I'm going to be the Llorona of the group today, I guess. But thank you so much. My name is Gris, and I'm just here to listen and share, but more to listen because I'm admiring the YA energy right now. Thank you, Margie.
Thank you for being here, Gris. I'm honored to have you. So I picked this group, and I wanted this group to showcase a powerful group of female voices that we have right now in young adult literature and middle grade literature. I think it's very important that we have powerful female voices, and that's why I wanted this. That's why I picked you guys. So why do you guys think? And then this doesn't have to be, we won't ask just a question like everybody. Let's just discuss why you think it's important to have strong female characters in books in this day and age, and why you choose to write the powerful voices that you write. Let's go.
I'm going to jump in and then somebody jump in with me. Don't leave me out here alone. For me personally, growing up, I grew up in South Texas, a little small town, and there were no books that I felt at the time I could really relate and connect to, right? And then as I got older and I looked again, and there's still, I was, when I would look in children's literature, I wasn't finding what I was looking for. And I think it's really important because I think there are many kinds of ways to be woman, whatever we define that as and how we look at that. And the books that I'm writing, I hope at times are looking at what that can look like, we look at not just in the skin or in the neurodiversity or in the orientation, but how we celebrate, who we are. And I think young women need to see that. and see that beautiful spectrum of what we can be and what we can look like. And so for me personally, the books that I'm writing, you know, I know a lot of people say I write the books that I need as a kid. And yes, I did need these books as a child, but I also write them for the kids who need them now and who need to grow and feel like they have a voice. Who else is like feeling any of this? Anyone? All right, jump in with me. Don't leave me out here.
You know, I started writing for young women because my students were clamoring for it. They were reading the Odyssey, or rather not wanting to read the Odyssey, and telling me, why do guys get all the adventures? Why do they get the gifts from the gods? They get to go out and do save the world. And the rest of us, what are the women doing in the Odyssey? They're weaving this. I'm not weaving for some guy for 20 years, no matter how cute he is.
Preach
and
it.
So yeah, that's what they told me. And so that really launched me into a deeper digging into who I am as a writer. What do I want to produce? What kind of characters do I want? And so my characters are all female, and their power comes, yes, from the gods. Sure, why not? Yes, from their parents. Sure, why not? But they also come from the self. They come from a deep embracing of who they are, their emotional journey, their intuition. Yes, some of them are lloronas. We love the lloronas in our lives because that is a power. That is something that comes from deep within our intuition of what is just and what is right and what we need to feed into the world and what we need to fight for. And so that's what I write about.
Sing it.
I love all of that, and I see this in my students as well. But also, when I was like kind of starting in college age to commit to like, I really want to be a writer. This is something I actually want to do. And starting to like make those like life decisions and career decisions. I had a really great mentor who like, you know, helped me a lot and told me a lot of things and, you know, talked to me about like grad school options. But he also told me, like, if you're serious about this, you have to stop writing teenage girl characters.
Wow.
And like,
wow.
Yeah, no. And he didn't, you know, he wasn't coming from a place of like trying to hurt me. He genuinely thought he was trying to help me, having been in MFA programs and seeing what those were like. And like, no one was more relieved than he was when I got into a writing for children program. Because I think he just was like, oh God, you're going to go with literary fiction people and they're going to eat you alive and like that sort of thing. But still, you know, trying to give him as much grace as possible. I'm very stubborn, and that was just, I heard that and I was like, never, I won't, I refuse. I think that there is a lot of that, like Kidlit has for a long time, you know, everyone thinks it's a thing that women do, but also anyone who writes about boys or any men in the space get elevated to such a degree because they're the ones that are important. They're the ones who are serious. They're the ones who are worthy of the heroism. So yeah, I think it is nice to have so many people here not doing that.
Well, and think about the kind of books that you're writing, like, and that you're giving to young people, you know? I mean, there was nothing like that. Can you hear me at all? Okay.
It was in and out for a second.
Yeah, it just, the kind of books that you're writing, that everyone's writing in this room, were there books like that for everyone when you were growing up? Because I didn't see them. Anyone? No,
they weren't.
I mean, I felt lonely. I felt alone because I couldn't find books that I felt connected to. And it doesn't mean that there aren't universal stories, but did everyone, I don't know, maybe no one else felt that. Did y'all feel any of that?
Yeah, no, I definitely echo that as well. Because I read a lot growing up as, you know, as a teenager, and I never saw books like that were about characters who looked like me or had my experiences. So I definitely agree with that. And another thing I wanted to add too is when I was a teenager, I was very shy and quiet, and I didn't want to be seen, and I didn't want to be heard, and I didn't use my voice at all. And so I'm very impressed by young people that I see today that are doing just that. They're using their voices like to stand up for themselves, to stand up for others. And that's kind of what I want to capture on the page is those kids that they don't necessarily want to speak out, but they see some kind of injustice or somebody being hurt by something, and they use their voice to stand up for each other, which is something I never did at that age. And I love to capture that on the page, and I love to read about those those kinds of teens, especially young women doing things like that?
I think for me, one of the big important reasons that I write the books about girls that I do is because I grew up with this sort of inherent belief, or belief surrounding me more like, that women were just less respected just by existing, is that you had to either meet men where they were, or you had to act like a man in order to be respected. Where I was like, what if I want to cry and also be respected? What if I want to be, I like pink and blue, like,
Yeah.
I like all the colors, things like that. And what I wanted to show, especially in Cece's, I mean, it centers around a girl who is like in a town full of very fiery people, is very watery and soft and cries easily, and very disrespected where she grows up, because of that. And the whole point was to show the beautiful strength that lies within people of all kinds, is that we all come with beautiful inherent value, and that's something I really want to show in my books, and something that I want all children to grow up knowing, is that you come with inherent value, and it's just about sharing it. It's just about learning what it is so you can share it, so you can give it to other people, so they can give it to other people, so you all are giving it,
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me, I wanted to jump in and be like, wait, weaving is really cool, you guys. I'm a big yarn craft person.
Yes. Oh, and about the like growing up with like, what did you ever see stories about you? No, I didn't. But but Guadalupe Garcia McCall's book Under the Mesquite was the first one that I read when I was in college. That I was like, no one's ever talked about these things that I feel. Yeah. So gracias, Guadalupe.
Thank you. I think emotional intelligence is underrated, like
Thank you.
supremely underrated in our world, not just in literature, but because literature reflects our world, right?
Yes.
And so when I was growing up and I was reading the first book that I read, talking to what he said, the first book that I read that I even connected with was The Pearl, but it was a Steinbeck book. Yeah. And it was about Coyotito, the baby, and the father and the mother, Juana. And I connected to Juana. I wanted to know Juana's narrative. I kept trying to read between the lines to find her, find her emotional intelligence in all this.
And we have to get so good at that. We have to look and like build like so much into these characters who are just stock. Like, yeah.
And so that's why my characters, they act like regular teenage girls with all the angst and all the emotions and all the tears and all the heart that we have to offer the world. I think that's really important.
I was very lucky because my dad was such a like powerful force in my like growing up, like because he was this big. My dad was 6'1", weighed 300 and some pounds. My dad was a huge man, and he was bigger than life too. He was involved in everything. He was in all kinds of boards, and he was just an amazing person. And he was a feminist. Like my dad would always tell me and my sister, that we never to like, like we could do everything even better than a man. Like he would tell us, and we were better than men. Like he was just one of those, and he like never for us to feel that we couldn't do something because we were a woman. And like I would, Daddy, I want to do this. And he would just be like, you do whatever it is you like. I never had limitations as a kid. That's why sometimes whenever I pile all this stuff on myself, and I'm like, oh my God, because my parents always told me you can do it all. And sometimes I can't do it all. Sometimes like, oh my God, like, why do I?
Yeah.
But because I've always had, like, I grew up with this strong man telling me that I was stronger than him. You know what I mean? So I think that's very important. And I have 2 sons, and I'm a boy mom, and I love it. Like I love my boys, but I'm teaching them too, like you, and they're little feminists. They believe their mom is the most powerful person in the world, and the most, because and they don't believe, like my Michael has a girlfriend, and I love the way he is with her. Like he's not one of those boyfriends that, like, I had a boyfriend in high school. That's why I didn't have boyfriends anymore, because he told me that I couldn't be friends with my friend. Like, I have a lot of guy friends, and he was like, you can't be friends with all your guy friends. And I was like, well, then I'd rather keep my guy friends than have you. So I was just turned off by the whole boyfriend thing, because I was like, nobody's gonna tell me what to do, you know. So my son is he like understands a little, like his girl. He has friends that are girls, and she has friends that are boys. It doesn't bother him. She wanted to go. She's first gen, so like, she was saying like all these schools that she was like getting letters from, and she was like, really, and I was like, you can go anywhere you want. Like, do not think because you are a Mexican female from the Valley that you can't go. You can go anywhere. Look at all these people that want you to go to their school, and so I think it's very important that whenever you have that, we need to teach our sons to be feminists as well, or to respect women as well.
Well, and some people might think that the books that we're talking about here are for, quote, women, right? Or for young women. They're for readers, all readers, so that we can respect and treat each other with humanity and compassion and love, right? And understand the differences and how we celebrate those. And that includes young men, right? Who can carry a book that says Fat Angie with a fat girl on the cover and walk through the halls and not be shamed by someone about, why are you reading that book, right?
Right.
Why aren't you reading, whatever, Boxing in America? I don't know. I just made that.
Absolutely.
And I've had to go up against, parents that are trying to tell their kids they can't read, like, Amber Brown, Junie B. Jones, just things that are like basic books for kids. Sorry.
No.
No, I just wanted to mention, I like to write queer stories. I realized that as I'm first generation. I had 3 big brothers, and my parents were, they had been migrantes, and so they were working all the time. And so basically books were a safe place for me. During the summer, my dad used to drop me off at the library. They dropped me off at the library, and I would spend the whole day there. And I was just thinking about that. He would pick me up on his way home. And so I would spend the summers at libraries. And if I can be honest, they named my childhood library after Sergio Troncoso. And I was mad. That's this library where I had my first library card. And I don't know, I feel like, is that in stone now? Is there any way that I can still work hard enough to usurp that library from him? Just saying. But I write queer stories, like in there's a high schoolers, teens, they really love my book Guadalupe Girl, because it really goes into childhood. And there's one where I'm a little girl and I'm walking past a house with my mom, and it's where the neighborhood lesbians live. And so everybody was very aware of that house, even though nobody ever came out of the house. We never saw these women, but my mom was very, and so we were walking by there, and she says, don't ever come here. And if they ever offer you food, don't eat it, don't take it. And I was
okay if you ate the food. Is it like it's in the water?
Or maybe that they were like, that they were trying to do something sinister, maybe. Like, I have no idea, but that stayed with me. And so so these are more adult themes, right? These are like, like I say, my characters are children, but they're also grown women, and it's me. And I like to intertwine the childhood and the grown woman together. And so in this particular piece, my mother is telling me avoid these women. And then as I get older, so I talk about how we used to kind of like play around that house. And then when I got older, I began dating a woman when I became a single mother. And she used to bring food for us. And I used to cook that food for my child. And so there's that kind of like the juxtaposition of my mother telling me that the food that 2 women made together was somehow bad or poisonous or evil. And then there's the nourishment that I'm giving my child, my baby, with food, that I'm cooking with another woman, and showing the tenderness and actually the non-sinister. There's nothing sinister about it, right? And so those stories have really facilitated a lot of healing, and even personally for me, asking my mom, why did you think that the food that the ladies would make, ¿qué estabas? ¿Por qué me dijiste eso, mom? Ay, mija, I'm sorry, mija. Yo era muy ignorante, mija. I'm sorry, mija. And, there's a lot of healing that comes from those conversations that I never would have had with my mother if I hadn't written those stories, and so there's just so much connection. I like kind of, I'm interested in writing specifically for teens, but I also like, I guess what I do, which is like the childhood story, and then it's along with like the adult woman, and maybe it offers some type of like closure, like a deep closure. But that's all.
I just want to say, Gris, I want to have a conversation with you about that, about how do you turn that adult woman into just the end of a YA novel where she's come of age.
Yep.
Because that conversation is just the coming of age part of the teenage life.
Exactly.
Yeah. You don't have to be a grown woman to have that conversation in a YA.
Exactly.
You can do it, Gris. You should do it. That is an amazing idea. I'd buy that book.
Okay. Wow.
So thank you guys. I really appreciate everything that you guys are saying, because I know it comes from the heart.
Wow.
And I appreciate that you guys write books with purpose for our young females and for our future, girls in the world. So thank you. So now I'm going to ask this kind of question. What kind of teenage girl were you? And we can just bounce off each other. Who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay.
I was a goody two shoes. I was really did everything my parents told me to do, did everything my teachers told me to do, really quiet, shy, did all my schoolwork. And I think part of it was because I carried a lot of responsibility. From a very young age, I was responsible for some adult things. I had to help my parents navigate this English-speaking world. I would call the bank for them. When we went to look for apartments, I was the one that would talk to the landlord and talk to my parents and translate. And so I had, I think, a lot of responsibility at a young age that I had to help, help my family. And they were immigrants to the United States. They came here from Guatemala at a very young age. Their English wasn't very good. And so I think I felt like a responsibility. I had to do everything I was supposed to. I didn't have room to make mistakes. If I made mistakes, how would that affect my family? And so I just did everything I thought I was supposed to. I had to navigate the whole school system by myself. I didn't have my parents checking on my grades or talking to my teachers or coming to events or anything like that. And I think that I realized at a very young age that if I didn't do everything I was supposed to, if I made bad grades, my parents didn't leave everything behind in Guatemala, their family, their country, their culture, their home, to come here for me to mess up and not graduate from school and not get good grades and not help them. So I think that's what I felt like I had no choice but to be good and not make mistakes and not lie to my parents and sneak out and do a lot of things that other kids are doing. I just didn't have room for those mistakes.
Wow. That is a lot of responsibility. And
It was.
Yeah. And wow, that is a lot of responsibility. Mm-hmm. I'm just sort of sitting here taking that in and I'm like, are you writing about that? It's incredible. That journey. For me, growing up as Mexican American in an adopted Caucasian family was very challenging because the greater family was very racist. So wetback and all of the things that we hear was part of dinner. you know, when you would meet with them, and it was really confusing, but you know, I had a white last name and I look white, right? So I pass. So then they just kind of forget, I think, on some level until it's quiet in the rooms. And so that part was hard. And then on the outside of school, you know, I'm very successful. I make good grades. I'm in all the sports. I'm on, you know, all the clubs and this and that. But inside, I was a very angry teenager. Like, I was very angry. I was angry about the home I lived in. I was angry about the life I was living. And, you know, had it not been for my friends, and I think that's why when I say that the first book that I ever felt seen was The Outsiders, people are like, well, you're not a boy and you didn't grow up in Oklahoma and this and that. And I said, what the reason why I felt seen in that book is because the friends were the family amongst the greasers for me. And when I saw that for the first time, I felt like, oh, my friends that's where I can belong. And because I couldn't belong in the home that I lived in, and I couldn't feel safe, and I couldn't be queer, right? So the things that I never could be in that home, I was getting from other people's mothers and other people's fathers and from the Mexican American community around me. And so when I think back, like, I remember it was a lot of success that's around me, but there was a lot of anger. And, you know, so I think when I meet young people and I tell some of my story, and the kids say, I feel very angry, or I feel like I want to die, or this and that. And I'm like, listen, I hear you. I respect your journey. I know what you're going through. Let's find someone that can see you. Let's find someone who can see you, whether, you know. And so I think that a big part of my journey in my writing is also creating characters that allow young people to feel seen and heard, hopefully. And so that they can feel like they can either have that conversation after the read or feel like that's part of their lives. But I look back and, you know, and I think some of it's a do-over, right? Like, we get to do a do-over in our writing. We get to do better. And so I wish I wasn't so angry, but it is the truth. It was my journey. And so, you know, I just live with that, you know, and I work through it now. So.
If you said angry, I was gonna say the first emotion that came to me for teenagerness was confused. I just felt like I was completely confused the whole time. And then, like, category wise, I just got slotted into nerd very early and just stayed there. It was actually very relaxing when I got to college and was not able to just be nerd anymore because there was a lot of nerdy people, and like I had to kind of find other things to be. But I feel like, yeah, growing up, it was hard to know how to be anything. And then we were all talking about how we didn't have a lot of, you know, literary role models. And so I was looking at I still really both feel this and realize how messed up this is, but like changeling characters, non-human characters, like all the, like, you know, oh, I'm secretly a fairy, or I was secretly switched at birth, or all those things were like the characters that I was like relating to super hard. So I think there's something really cool about being able to write like my realistic, my YA characters, especially being like just real humans in Houston, feeling all that confusion, kind of trying to find where they belong, kind of trying to find out who they are. I was also like I was feeling what Kaela was talking about, that like disrespect, and really fighting against that in a lot of ways, and not always in like the best ways. And I think sometimes I was thinking like, yeah, you have to push that aside. You have to be the most fiery, you know, person ever. And then not quite when I was a teen, but, you know, somewhere in between then and now, my little cousin transitioned and was talking about our family, and was talking about how she was so angry that she wasn't included in the family gossip, that she didn't grow up getting to, you know, sit around and have these certain types of discussions. And it gave me some like perspective to be a little bit more thankful for getting certain like treatment, and I had been so focused on like the treatment that I got being born in the body that I was born, annoyed about it, feeling like it was like this big burden. So I think a lot of times, you know, my little cousin, who was like, no, give me it, I want it, please respect this about me, it made me realize that, like, I don't know, that I was taking some things for granted, about like everything we've been talking about the emotional intelligence, about the ways that people will trust you with certain things, and trust you with certain emotions, and trust you to have your emotions. So yeah, teenager.
I was definitely a child poet. I remember being a child poet, and starting second, third grade, I joined UIL poetry, and I would memorize poems, and then I'd go compete and perform them. So when I feel like I've been doing this my whole life, is, performance poetry. And it's what I do as an adult, and so I would, learn all the Jack Prelutsky's, Shel Silverstein books, and I'd go out there and I sometimes win, sometimes not. Sometimes I one time I tried to do it in Spanish and I failed miserably. But I remember always just being involved with reading, and I've never been the best student. I think I've always been too much of a dreamer. So I've actually always been a mediocre student. I've been a mediocre student, like mediocre grades, like D's, C's, a couple of A's. And I really feel like I'm still that way, even throughout college. I can only give as much as I can. I have an autoimmune condition, and in a lot of ways, the way that I take information in is just different from the way that, we're expected to. So academically, I was basically doing the minimum so that I could be in every extracurricular activity. I was the lead in the school musical my freshman year. So I was just always doing too much, I think, as a child of immigrants, hoping that they would pay attention. I'm not really sure, but they really didn't a whole lot. I'm going to be honest. And even now, my parents, although they are supportive, they're not really too involved. I don't know if they really read a whole lot of what I'm writing. And that gives me a freedom, actually. That gives me a freedom. And so I just don't remember, seeing a lot of books that were for Chicanas, that were for young brown women. And I think I was always kind of like, I grew up with the same kids, going to the same AP classes, English AP, I'm failing math, but I have an A in English type of kid. But then my senior year, I actually got kicked out of AP English because I refused to read The Fountainhead.
Wow.
And I remember this so clearly because I just didn't like it. I hated it. And I wasn't reading it. And they actually confronted me, the class. And these were all kids that I had grown up with, like all the nerds. The nerds are very emotional. These were all my friends. And I remember like someone was like, he started crying and he said, "It's like you don't care." I wasn't going, I was ditching school. I was ditching class. English was my first period and I was ditching it because I didn't want to go to these discussions. And they actually ended up kicking me out of AP English. And they sent me to a portable that was out like the end of the parking lot where like the teacher that taught all the cholos, basically. Because I was like, it was a very Hispanic, very Chicano school. So there were a lot of cholos where I come from. And that's where the teacher that was teaching them, he was teaching them The Stranger.
Ah.
So they were learning French existentialism over there. And I remember that I read The Stranger, and The Stranger ended up being, one of the most significant books for me. And it really ended up pushing me towards writing rebelliously in a lot of ways. I think I model a lot of my thinking and my work after The Stranger. And so I guess I ended up rebelling. I ended up rebelling really hard because I was so oppressed.
I want you to write that story, though.
I always say that I had to rebel to survive.
Yeah. That story,
and I still live that way.
Yeah.
That is so good. I mean, can you imagine a story called Cholo School and reading The Stranger? Like, I'm serious. Like, that's another YA you just wrote on this. I mean, no joke. Like, Cholo School. I want to read that. Like, I'm not even kidding you. Like, that's the YA that's missing. Like, and I just want to say, when you brought up the UIL thing also, like I said, I was very angry. I was a very angry young person, but UIL literally was what saved my life. Like, being And does everybody in Texas, you know, the UIL where we compete in drama and all the things. And like, that was everything, because that's when I was feeling seen finally. And I was, yeah, exactly. Right. And then band and all of that. But reading, that was where I could perform and I could like learn. And because there were so few books, and even in my town, and learning poetry and feeling alive, and people like poetry, but then I'm reading Cummings and I'm like, wait, he can just take these words and he can throw them anywhere he wants on the page. And that's writing. You can do this. And it was like a freedom, it was crazy, because I just didn't have any influences growing up. Right. And so I'm taking whatever little bit of scraps that are there and trying to say.
I never connected your name with the poet.
Well, yeah. So the little E is for E.E. Cummings. The big E was for S.E. Hinton. I know she's not aged well, but it was for the outsiders. So anyway, yeah. So.
Well, I want to say that, Gris, I really, really love all the things you've talked about. It really feels to me like you're ready. You're ready to go into YA. So, anything I can do.
Cholo school.
Please.
I'm taking it. I'm taking this as because the way that we, in terms of like indigenous thinking, we always look for signs.
Yes.
Right. There's always the signs along the road. And as I'm sitting here and I'm listening with these fantastic authors, I'm going, a vision, a new vision. Yeah.
This is your sign.
I'm just.
Kaela, what were you like? What were you like as a young person? Were you a rebel?
I was a cannonball of a human being. I think is a good way of putting it.
Oh, I like it.
All through high school, I stepped through the doors and I was like, nobody talk to me. I'm here for only one reason. To get amazing grades, to get a scholarship, to go to college so I can get a job, so I can have a future. Nobody talks to me.
Wow.
So I was very survivalist oriented. And I was also very suspicious. Like if you came up to me in school and were like, hey, do you want to sit with us? In the most well-meaning way, like even like straight up, even if you were authentically and sincerely wanting me to sit with you, I'd be like, why? I was that kind of person. My book is modeled after somebody who, like a CC, the soft, watery-hearted person who I was on the inside, but I made sure to layer myself with some strong iron, some very heated iron. So I was hot to the touch. So people just kind of didn't want to come and talk to me, so I was definitely the kind of person, if any of y'all have seen Hitch, it was like the get off on the forehead. It was like, you don't want to go near that one. She's got like nuclear energy around her. And it was perfectly by design. I was like, yes, I'm sorry. I'm busy. I've got things to do and it doesn't involve you.
Did you play any instruments? I'm just curious.
I've never been musical actually, but I did do AP choir. I did AP English. There was probably another AP in there. AP art, that was it. And then I was also drama club president. And I volunteered at the library. So I was doing a lot of things. And I was like, sorry, people are not in part of that. There were people who adopted me anyway. The very stubborn people who were like, hello, Kaela. And I was like, I keep not talking to you and you keep coming. But I'm grateful for those people. They're very stubborn, slightly boundary breakers, but sometimes you need people who push on you a little bit. And I appreciated that. I grew out of that with time. I started to realize that like not everybody who exists is attempting to has secret plans to destroy you, but I was definitely like that as a teenager. Like my parents would come home. Oh, one of the best examples. One time I came home to my house and there was blood all over the front doorsteps. And I was like, someone's come in and murdered my entire family. That was my first thought. And so I went out into my woods. I lived on like 8 acres of land in Tennessee, I went out and I broke off a branch from a tree. I sharpened it and I went into my house with this makeshift javelin to avenge my family's death. And they're all sitting on the couch watching TV. And I was like, what's the blood? What's the blood about? Why would you do this to me? You know how I am.
What was the blood about?
My mom had fallen on the steps, which was so sad. And she hit her nose. She didn't even break her nose. But it hit it and it just made it gush. And she was fine at that point. But I was like, don't just leave blood on the front steps. Don't do that.
And
was the
that's
kind
not
of
your
person-
fault. That's just classic foreshadowing.
There you
Yeah.
go.
I was like, listen, I know how to read signs. My family has been murdered today. This is my coming of age story, and I'm ready with my javelin.
I think
Wow.
So,
I was a little bit of everything. I've been listening to all of you thinking, I was like that. I was like that. I was like that. I think we are so, multi-dimensional, right? In Under the Mesquite, if you've ever read Under the Mesquite, I talk about my mom being multifaceted. And I see myself like my mom. I was forced into this responsibility, right? You're the oldest, your mother has passed away, you have to take care of your sisters, you have to take care of your family. So I was made into a leader. So I am a man-made leader, not a natural leader. It does not appeal to me to be in leadership positions. And so many people put me in those because I guess I carry that in my everyday life, but I don't like it because with great responsibility comes with great leadership skills comes great responsibility. And I wanted, as the oldest, I would see my sisters jump the windows to go visit with their boyfriends and take off in their cars and go to the main and be driving up and down. I never understood that, but go park in front of the lake with the boy. I wanted to do all those things. I wanted to be rebellious. There was anger, there was frustration, there was injustice in my world. And so I rebelled. I was the rebel that was a quiet rebel.
Ah.
Oh, all of you are flunking because you're out with your boyfriends. Well, guess what? I just got another award in UIL.
Preach it.
I just got another straight A's in my classes. So that was my form of rebellion, to prove myself above it all, above all the nastiness, all the meanness, all the bullying, because I was this chubby girl. So all the things that my friends and my sisters and people that did things to me, I would just take it and say, take pure energy, dark energy, and turn it into light. Turn it into goodness in your life. Turn it into something so amazing, nobody can take it away from you. And so my education, my books now, everything I do is how I have turned darkness into light, and that nobody can take away.
Sing it.
That's so beautiful and necessary. The ability to turn ashes into beauty, the ability to turn darkness into light. And it's amazing how we are as human beings. We have such a capacity to do that. And it's hard, but it's amazing how we can always find light and convert darkness into light if we let ourselves. And that's what I find so important in books. And that's what I hope That's what I hope my books always do to people, is they help them convert darkness into light, the pain into joy, the sorrow into freedom.
So you all are healers. I have this ongoing conversation with my very good friend, comadre Irene Lara Silva, very beloved, very respected. And at some point we talk about how we have made a commitment to write works that are socially redeeming.
Yes.
And I feel comfortable. I feel that I can spend the rest of my life working within that scope, within that scope of healing. And while I'm listening to all of you, I'm also seeing that this is all about healing. So again, yet another reason why you all are my people. But there's that commitment to write socially redeeming works that I'm seeing.
For when you're writing for kids, like to some degree you have to, because you're not like, there's a little bit less freedom to just put all of your dark emotions on the page without then showing some light. Like just that little bit of like, oh, I'm writing for a particular audience, I think makes kidlit writers more likely to be in that space.
I think that's why trauma survivors and people with PTSD and all these various forms, why children literature is such a caring mentor for them. Me and a friend of mine, we both have PTSD. And that's why we love middle grade, is middle grade doesn't, but I'm slightly biased against adult literature, but I feel like adult literature's whole goal is to be like holding your head under the water and being like, do you feel it? Do you feel the pain? Stay there. And I'm like, well, I'm already living life, okay? Let me up.
Mhm.
Well, middle grade is like dunks your head under the water and then pulls you back up, and then you realize you're cleaner than you were before, and everything's brighter actually, and you can see better, and you're like, yeah,
I can see that.
Middle grade leaves you with hope. Its goal is to give you, it's to be affirming. It's to remind you that life is worth living. It's to give you courage. It's to heal you on the other side. You know, that's why I like children's literature way better.
I think we're creatures of light. We are all humans. As we're pure energy. We are creatures of light, and we're drawn to it. And why wouldn't we gift this to young people? Why wouldn't we enlighten them and inform them that even though there are dark, horrible things that might or could or have happened to them, there is this beautiful thing called home, which is light, which is hope, which is understanding the wisdom in the darkness and going through it.
This is why I wanted, whenever I wanted to be a librarian, it's like I wanted to specifically be a young adult librarian. Although I love children's books, picture books are my favorite books in the whole world, but there's something about the young adult novel and the middle grade novel, the novel for, young people that gives you hope. Like I can read, and I love romance. Romance is my favorite because I love boys and I love all the pretty boys and I just love it, right? So I read young adult romance and I'm always 16 and I'm always in love with a boy and my life is always happy because I read young adult romance. And that I just, I love. And there's, the coming of age story and I just love young adult books. And that's when people say that adults shouldn't read young adult books. No, adults need to read young adult books so they can come to accept themselves, to heal themselves, and just to be better people. Young adult literature, children's literature is just, that's where it's at. I don't even know why anybody would read anything else. But
Margie, to go on that, I always think of young adult books as books that really straddle that line and go into feeding into the world. My best letter that I will never forget was a 53-year-old woman who had lost her daughter on was coming home from college and her daughter had an accident and passed away. And she read Under the Mesquite. And she said, I never thought I was going to get beyond the pain, but your novel shows me that I can and I will. And I was in tears because here's a 53-year-old woman reading a YA novel that 10-year-olds are reading in 12-year-olds or 5th and 6th grade. And she's 53 and she is getting just as much out of it as those kids did. And so I think YA speaks to a broader audience and a broader base than we really understand or see.
I think it does now. I think it does now. And I think your books are a testament to that. I think it does now. I don't think historically it always did. I really don't. But I think your books and others,
in the same way that, like we were saying, we write books with girl characters, but they're not just for girls to read. I think that in general, like as evidenced in my story, teenage girls are often dismissed and thought of as frivolous and thought of as anything they're interested in is only for teenage girls and everyone else is too good for it. And it's number one, not true. Number two, no fun. I have I'm thinking how much I want to. One of my people that I work with is kind of an older man, and he was excited about my books coming out. And so he read both of my young adult books and came back with a very similar, I was a little nervous because, there's a lot of queer characters and there's a lot of discussion about social justice. And there's a lot of, I've gotten the comment that why are there no good white characters in Love, Sugar, Magic? Why are there no good male characters in This Is How We Fly? I was writing the world that I see. But there are, by the way, side note, there are, but so I was a little nervous about him, white man, boomer age, what he would come back with once he had read them. And he came back just so like saying, wow, this is amazing. It's really helping me understand my students. There were a lot of things that were unfamiliar to me, but I really understand them better. And it was just a really good experience of someone that you might think is not the target audience. It's not who I necessarily had in mind when I was writing. And I think he and a couple of interviewers have asked me oh, are you writing to try to teach people about how to interact with these issues? And I'm like, no, I wasn't actually. I was writing for the people who are dealing with them and can't get away from them. But good. If you're learning about them, good.
Well, I also want to say the thing about culture is the other thing that shocked me about this woman was that she was from Australia. So she wasn't even an American. She wasn't anywhere near my culture, and yet she connected with this whole other culture on another part of the world. And that's just the power of books.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's books. And if we just let people read books built when we start them young as babies, reading books about different cultures, about different lands, about different everything. These kids grow up to be more empathetic. They accept everybody better than the books that we did. Because the books when we read, we've done a lot for ourselves, but the books that we read when we were kids, or that I read, they were all, and I don't mean to be, they were all basically books about white kids and white people. And it's not that I didn't relate to, I loved them, like Sweet Valley High. Some of my favorite books, Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley Twins, Sweet Valley High, I love, to this day, I still love those books. But I identified with those characters because they were, girls who, they had girl drama and they were in high school. So I read those books and I loved them. But I didn't, they didn't look like me. They didn't talk like me. They didn't anything like me. But, but we, as kids, like us now giving to art, because I remember when I taught 8th grade, that was the first thing my kids were telling me. It's where are the Mexican kids, miss? So I started looking for the Mexican kids, for my students, because that's what they wanted to read. And so I'm so happy now that we have more for everybody, not just for Mexicans, but for all cultures.
Yes.
And for all ethnicities, because it's important that we see ourselves, that everybody sees themselves in books.
But and the need for more also, right? And the need for more. I was just having a conversation this week and someone said, well, there's so much more. And I said, yes, there is so much more. When you look statistically, though, it's really not as much as it, it's really small. And then I said, and again, please correct me if I'm incorrect in this estimate, but Native writers probably get some of the shortest change of all. And so, and myself and another author were preparing to teach something. I said, this is where we can now use our privilege in whatever platform we're teaching, and let's put Native writers in this and talk about their work and talk about, and Latinx and African American and Asian American, or Asian, and looking at that and saying, what can you do to elevate, right? Because it is not enough is the problem, and there's all this fear, that I sense at times, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that it's either or, and it's the idea is inclusive, right? We bring everyone to the table. Everybody gets to have part of the meal, and it's not either or. And so I think is the strides that we've come, especially since the creation of Reading Diverse Books, right? The strides that have come, there's so much more to do in the journey. And I think things like this remind us that it's a celebration of what we're doing, of our stories, of our culture, of other cultures, right? And let's keep doing that so that we have what you're saying, Margie, which is the compassion and the empathy, and we can grow. And you can have someone in Australia read your book, Guadalupe, and go, I'm 53 years old. I'm a woman in Australia, and you just helped me begin to heal my heart. And what a gift that is. And then we don't know the ripple it is for a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old that reads Anna's book or my book or Kaela's book or Gris's poetry. We don't, or, Marcia's, we don't know, but the ripples are out there. And that's why we keep doing this, right? Is to do that and to celebrate story. And so others will celebrate their story, right? Especially young people,
Ladies, I want to say thank you. See how fast that hour went? And I only asked 3 questions. And that's how we were able to the discussion was perfect. And I want to thank you guys so much for being here. I admire every single one of you. And thank you for sharing your stories and your morning with us. And I hope to see you guys. I want to go back live next year. This is what I say. And I'm hoping that I can get it all together here in the here in the Valley to get everybody here. And so if I do, I will reach out and see what we can do about bringing everybody in person, because I think it's very important for our young people too. The reason I started this book festival, and the first 5 years we're live, was to have kids, you know, come to a book festival to see authors that look like them, that talk like them, that, you know, and I loved it. But COVID and all that stuff. So, but now we're getting better. So thank you guys. And I hope to see you all soon. Maybe TLA. Is anybody going to TLA?
I'm going.
Okay, then I'm going to get to see everybody in TLA.
I'll see you there.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Margie.
Amazing.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a great
Margie.
day.